Hi, second grade. We're getting ready to read The Boy Who Cried Wolf. This is the second version of the book, and it is narrated by the sheepish but truthful wolf. Narrated means that the wolf told the story. Our reading job today is to describe the overall structure of a story, including describing how the beginning introduces the story, and later in the week we're going to describe how the ending concludes the action. So describe the structure. What does that mean? It means the way in which the story is organized. All fiction books have a certain structure to them. Usually it starts with an introduction. We call this the beginning, and in the introduction, it's how the story opens. Usually the author tells us who the characters are, they tell us about the setting, and then they present a problem. So that's what we'll be looking for in today's read. But then the end of a story, which we call the conclusion, it concludes with how the problem is solved, what has changed for the character, and the author's point or lesson. And then the action of the story is how the character works on solving the problem. That's usually the middle. The character's trying to solve the problem. Okay? And every fiction story has that same structure. An introduction, character is introduced, setting, problem, middle where this action on working on the problem, and then the conclusion when the problem is solved, the character changes, and the author makes some sort of point or lesson. So the strategy we're going to use this week is called uh-oh, phew. And the uh-oh, phew strategy is when you have to retell a story, you need to think about the problem. We'll call that uh-oh. And then you need to think about how the problem gets worse. Uh-oh again, just a bigger uh-oh. And how the problem gets solved. Phew! You can use this story mountain that I've given you to tell the parts of the story. And you can touch the parts of the story mountain as you go. So if you look, I have a B, that's for beginning. The problem and main characters are introduced. Then if you go up the story mountain, the action starts. The character starts working on the problem. Then if you go to the top of the mountain, the most exciting or important moment in the story happens. And then if you go down the story mountain, we have E for N, and the problem is solved. So that's phew! The character usually learns something. Newsflash, just because a story is repeated many times doesn't mean it's true. I should know. I'm the wolf in the fable you just read, and I feel downright sorry for the shepherd boy, because he didn't lie at all. Let me tell you what really happened. My name is Whisper. Strange name for a wolf, right? You see, soon after I was born, my mother got sick and died. A flock of kind sheep took me in and raised me as their own. As I grew, they made me sheep costumes so I would fit in. And whenever I wanted to howl, they would shush me. Whisper, they told me. They said that word so often that Whisper became my name. So I know that in the structure of a story, the beginning usually always introduces the characters. The characters I heard so far are Whisper, who's the wolf, a flock of sheep, and a shepherd boy. I loved my sheep family, but I couldn't live with them forever. A wolf is meant to roam. So when I was all grown up, I said goodbye and set out on all sorts of wolf adventures. I took up cross-country running, tried lots of new foods, made friends with the three little pigs, but that's a whole other story. I even joined a choir. After a while, though, I started feeling homesick. I decided to pay my sheep family a surprise visit. I was so eager to see everyone that I didn't even bother looking for my old sheep costume. I just ran right into the flock. It felt so good to be back. The old half-blind shepherd wasn't there anymore. In his place was a young shepherd boy. From the look on his face, he was very confused. Why weren't the sheep scared of me? The boy did exactly what he was supposed to do, though. He called for help. "Wolf!" he cried. "Wolf! Wolf!" So I now see the first problem in the story. What's the problem? Start with uh-oh. I scrambled to a hiding spot behind a large tree and watched as the villagers came racing to the pasture. They were yelling like crazy. Then they stopped short. There was no wolf, and the sheep were calm. So I know that another part of story structure in the beginning is that the setting should be introduced, and on this page is where I find it. It says the setting is a pasture, and a pasture is a grassy area. Also on this page, the problem gets worse because now the villagers are coming after the wolf, but then they can't see the wolf. Is this some kind of trick? Demanded the flock's owner. His name was Walter. There was a wolf. The boy was so upset that he couldn't catch his breath. He started wheezing. No trick. I really saw a wolf, he gasped. Some of the villagers standing farthest away from the boy mistook the wheezing for giggling. What, is he laughing? They asked. Does he think this is a joke? I wanted to roll my eyes. Humans have terrible hearing. Absolutely terrible. What new characters are introduced? If you had to just tell me the problem using a few words, what would you say? Okay, time for your journal. We just read the beginning of the story. Think about the major events and write a few sentences to describe the beginning of the story. You might start your sentence with, in the beginning. Then you'll need to think about, how is this version of the fable different from the first version you read? Write at least one major difference in your journal. Your sentence might sound like, this version of the fable is different from the first version because, and you'll finish the sentence.